This is Rock and Roll English. Real people, real English. Here's your host, Martin Johnston.
Hello everyone and welcome to a bonus episode of Rock and Roll English. In today's show, there is no Dan the Man. Woo-hoo. It's just me. So I don't know if that's good news or bad news for you, but that's the situation. So in this episode, I'm going to give you some tips and advice, although that's the same thing really, about learning English and how I, or we, like me and Dan, can help you with learning English. I don't really like to use the term we when I speak about Dan because it makes it sound like we're a couple. And as we have said many times, that is definitely not the situation. Anyway, recently I asked all of you on social media, on Instagram and Facebook, the thing that you have most difficulty with in English. And I got many responses and I responded to all of them, I think. I always try to respond to all messages. Don't hate me if I don't, but I promise I try. And generally I think I do. Anyway, so the things that people said were things like fluency, phrasal verbs, pronunciation, listening, prepositions, conditionals, memorising words, and many more. So all of these things may sound like different problems, but in reality, they can all be fixed in the same way, which is exposure. Exposure to English. So what do I mean by exposure? Exposure is contact with the language. So how often do you see the language? How often do you read the language? Notice there I said see and read and not speak, because many people think that speaking is the most important thing to learn a new language, but that is not true. In fact, a recent study made a list of the 3 most important things you need to do to learn a language. And do you want to know what they are? Good, because I'm going to tell you. And remember, this is a study, and this is not one of the stupid studies I read on the internet that I do like the podcast about. This is from a respectable book, because I do actually read books about teaching English, because I am a bit of a nerd. Anyway, the 3 things are, number 1, motivation. So without this, obviously you have nothing. Not just motivation to learn though, motivation to do things. For example, I'm still learning Italian. So to have exposure to Italian, I often read and watch things about football because that's what I'm interested in. That's what motivates me. If it was something about art, for example, I wouldn't be interested because I'm not very cultured. I know nothing about art and I wouldn't be motivated. So motivation is the most important thing. Number 2 is exposure. As we said before, like the contact you have, like speaking and reading. These are called receptive skills, if you're interested. And productive skills are speaking and writing. Anyway, speaking of productive skills, number 3 is speaking. That may surprise a lot of people that exposure or contact comes before speaking. But think about this for a minute. If you don't see new words, if you don't hear new words, how can you use them? If you don't hear new grammar structures, how can you use them? It's impossible. You need to see these first. So, what's the answer for this? What can we do to use these new words and grammar structures? The answer is exposure, our favourite friend. For this episode, actually, I'm going to talk a lot about exposure. So it's very important you know what it is. Anyway, to reinforce this and show you that I'm not making this up, and remember, making something up means inventing something. So to demonstrate I'm not making this up, I've got some statistics for you to show how important exposure is. And again, these are not things I've just made up in my mind. These are things that I've read in books. So did you know that after you see a new word, you need to see it 7 times in different contexts to remember it? 7. So how can you see a word 7 times? Exposure, our friend. Because the more you read and the more you listen, the more chance there is of seeing that word again. You are increasing the probability. But I've got another fantastic stat, or sexy stat. Let's call it a sexy stat. It sounds better. So an educated English speaker, like native English speaker, like me, not Dan, because Dan is not as educated as me. He didn't go to university. So he is definitely less educated than me. Anyway, so an educated English speaker knows about 20,000 words, whilst a language learner like you will be lucky to know 5,000. And to pass the exam, the FCE Cambridge exam, which is only B2 level, they say you need to know these 5,000 words. But why is it difficult for you as language learners, or even me in Italian as language learners, to arrive at 20,000 words? Is it lack of ability? Is it because, we are stupid? Absolutely not. The reason is, again, our friend, exposure. You need to be exposed to these words to learn them. For example, I grew up in England. I heard English every day at school, at home. I watched films. So I was exposed to English every single day. But the great thing about today's world is you don't need to live in a country to be exposed to that language. For example, you don't need to live in England to be exposed to English every day. You can read books, watch films, and the best thing you can do is listen to podcasts. And I generally think listening to podcasts is the best thing you can do because you can do it anywhere. For example, watching films is great, but 2 hours concentration, finding the time, it's not so easy. Listening to podcasts, you can listen when you clean, when you, are waiting for the bus, when you're walking to work, in any moment of the day. So I generally think podcasts are the best thing to get this exposure, but you need to do it every day. You need that exposure every day because the more you expose yourself, the more chance you have of acquiring the language instead of learning the language. You may ask, what's the difference between learning or acquiring? Well, learning is like sitting down with a textbook, trying to study and things like this. Acquiring is done more naturally and you naturally acquire the language. Like babies, for example, they do not read textbooks and study their native languages. Well, I've never seen a baby do that. If you have seen a baby study from a textbook, please let me know and send me a picture. But generally, they do not study or learn languages. They acquire them. First, they listen, they absorb all of these words, let's say. Then they speak. But it is a more natural process. And that natural process is what will happen to you when you expose yourself to English every day. Things start to become more natural. So instead of thinking to yourself, the second conditional, okay, if plus past, and then the next part is would plus verb, that just comes more natural because the sound, it will sound more natural and normal to you. So all of these problems I mentioned that you had earlier, for example, pronunciation, phrasal verbs, prepositions, all of these things, I mean, you can sit and you can study them if you want for hours and hours, or the other option is to expose yourself to English every day so it becomes more natural and you acquire it. It's the same with memorizing words. You can write lists and try and memorize them every day, but as we said, you need to see that word 7 times in different contexts before you can remember it. So the key thing here that I'm saying is what you need to overcome all of these problems is exposure. Of course, there are other things you can do, but the first thing where you need to start is exposure so you can acquire the language. So that's all the information for today. I'm going to give you about learning languages. So how can we help you? Well, not we, Rock and Roll English help you. But again, I don't like even saying Rock and Roll English because that makes it sound like we're a big multinational company, which we're not. There's just me and Dan. But remember, if I say we sound like a couple. So there's no win situation. Maybe I'll just say me and Dan. Anyway, that's not so important. How can me and Dan help you? Or Dan and I is the correct way to say that. Often I make mistakes myself in English. Never mind. Anyway, we are starting a members area called Rock and Roll English Full Volume. So, what is it? Good question. The main thing really is that there will be a podcast every day. So you have the normal podcast on a Monday, then a podcast on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We are not going to do weekends because weekends are for rocking. So that will be exposure every single day. Well, every weekday. And the podcast will be a bit shorter, the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday ones, like 5 to 10 minutes. And they will come with transcripts, so you can listen and read English every day. And what did we say about listening and reading English? What are they? Exposure. Contact. That contact you need with the language. So you can increase the chances of acquiring the language. That's another very key word for this actually. Acquire. So exposure and acquire are the main words from today. And the other important thing is if you like the show, your motivation to listen will be very high. Remember what we said earlier about motivation, and for example me with football. If you like rock and roll English, then obviously you will be motivated to listen. If you don't like rock and roll English, probably just stop listening to this podcast now is the best thing. Anyway, so let's get back to the members area. So you have the podcasts every day and the transcripts, but that's not it. Oh no. When you decide to join the members group, you will also get access to a secret Facebook group where there will be interaction with other group members, also personal interaction from me and Dan. Dan will even use his personal Facebook profile. The man of mystery will actually write as his own name. So you can ask us stuff like I don't know, if you want to see if a sentence is correct, things like this. You will also get access to an app that we are creating. Well, we're not creating the app. We're putting vocabulary into the app to help you memorize the vocabulary. So you can just play around with that on your phone. The vocabulary from the podcasts, obviously, not just any random vocabulary. You will also get access to an ebook that I myself recently wrote about free apps and sites to help you learn English. In the members area, I will also do regular Facebook Live videos where I will answer your grammar questions, and I will also do some specific lessons about grammar topics that maybe you will suggest. And I'm even going to try and do some actual group lessons where I can speak to a few members of the group and we can have like a normal lesson. And there will be competitions to win a private lesson, one-to-one Skype lesson with Dan the Man. I say lesson, he doesn't really know anything about grammar or anything about English, but he speaks English very well, so it's good speaking practice. So whatever problem you have in English, as we spoke about before, whether it was phrasal verbs, listening, prepositions, conditionals, whatever it is, the first step to resolving it is that daily exposure we spoke about. Anyway, you're probably asking yourself, is this free, this members area? As obviously, you know, we love free stuff, as we did a podcast recently about it as well. And everything we have delivered so far has been 100% free for more than 1 year. In fact, we've actually lost money because, well, I actually have had to pay for the podcast hosting, the website, the equipment. But on top of that, obviously all the hours and hours and hours and hours of work we have put into delivering this free content. So the bad news is that this new members area is not free. The good news, however, is that it only costs €10 a month. And to put that into perspective, we've had numerous messages from listeners saying they would be happy to pay €10 a month as a donation for the work we do at the moment, which was obviously very nice of those people, but we didn't accept the money. Instead, for €10, you will continue to get all of the free stuff, the Monday podcast, the quiz, etc. But you will also get a podcast every day, the transcripts, the memorization app, the lessons on Facebook, but most of all, you will get daily exposure, which I think we mentioned is quite important. And to put more perspective on that, when I do a private lesson face-to-face here in Palermo, I ask for €30 an hour. So in 1 month, you will get exposure to English much more than for 1 hour, and it will be for a third of the price of one lesson. So If that sounds good, maybe you're asking yourself, okay, great, how can I sign up for this? Stay with me, people, because that is what I'm going to say now. What you need to do is go to rockandrollenglish.com/full volume. So remember, ROCKN for no, rollenglish.com/full volume. There will also be a link on Facebook and Instagram, so you can just click on that if you want. Okay, so you go there. Then what do? There will be a box where you simply put your email address in the box, and Dan the Man will personally respond to you to give you access to all of the members area. But another question you are probably asking yourself is, do I have to pay now? The answer to that question is absolutely not. We will give you 2 weeks free access to everything. The podcast, the transcripts, the secret Facebook group, the memorization tools, the Facebook lessons, the ebook, etc. 2 weeks completely free, as we want you to try before you buy. So if you don't like it, at the end of the 2 weeks, you can just say, no thanks, goodbye, and there will be no problem. We are bastards, Dan and I, but we are fair bastards. Okay, so if you don't like it after 2 weeks, you can just tell us, no problem, we will say goodbye, and no one has died, we will still be friends. So again, just go to rockandrollenglish.com/full volume, complete the box thing, and then Dan the Man will tell you what to do. Anyway, as this is the first time we are doing something like this, obviously we're not sure how to manage it. So we are putting a limit on the first 100 people to contact us. And it will be first come, first served, which means the first people that contact us will get priority. You can contact us for the first 2 weeks of the free content, which will finish on Sunday, the 24th of February. But if you contact us after the first 100 people, you will have to wait until next time we open the members area. And another important thing is that when we open it again, I don't know when that will be, but the price will be higher because we are going to add more services. The plan is to ask our members, the first 100 people, for feedback to see what they want or what you want, so we can help you more and continue to add services. I have a lot of difficulty speaking. I don't know, it's a new thing. But obviously if we add more services, the price will go up. Again, I think that's fair because if the price goes up, we are working more. So, I don't know. It sounds fair to me. But the good news is that if you join now, the price will always be €10 a month for you. Even if the price one day in the future, I don't know, goes to 20, 30, 40 euro a month, if you do it now, you will always pay 10 until the day you die, or I don't know, the day the members area stops. Probably not a good idea to speak about dying at the moment, so sorry about that. But you will always pay 10 is what I'm trying to say. So if you want to guarantee your place in the members area, get exposure every day, and guarantee the price of €10 a month forever, what do? rockandrollenglish/full volume. Fill out the box. Remember, very simple, no money, but exposure. And exposure is the king. Maybe a choir can be the queen, let's say. You may be asking yourself, why should I pay €10 a month? I can get exposure anywhere. I can watch films, read books, blah, blah, blah. First of all, though, we're not asking you to pay anything now, so don't worry. But most of all, you can have exposure to something you like every day. Remember, motivation to do that thing. And motivation is even above king and queen. It's God, as we said. It's the most important thing. Plus, you'll have all the benefits of the other things we spoke about. And another important reason is for Dan the Man. Dan the Man doesn't work. He's a freelance human being. Just do it for him, okay? Do it for Dan. That's obviously a joke, okay? The thing about do it for Dan. But the rest about the daily exposure, motivation, and all of that is definitely not a joke. And anyway, if you are not sure about anything and you have any questions, just ask us. We are not a multinational company. We are two normal, real people. I don't know how to explain it. And even if you've never spoken to us directly, I imagine you've probably got to know us by listening to the podcast, and we're not so bad. A bit boring, especially Dan, but not so bad. And as I said, we're real people, as the American guy says at the beginning of the show. Real English, real people. That's us. We speak real English and we are real people. So we will respond to you. And as I said, Dan will personally respond to you to give you access to the members area anyway for the free 2 weeks. One important thing though is if you complete this box and you don't hear back from us, check your spam folder, as we can guarantee that we will respond, but we cannot guarantee that the email will not go to the spam folder. So check it. So almost finished now. Just a quick recap. What are the 2 most important things to learn English? Motivation is God. Exposure is king. So if you want this daily exposure to something you are motivated about, and if you want to listen to the podcast every day, if you want to read the transcripts, if you want the free ebook, and ones I will probably write in the future, if you want access to the app, the lessons, the competitions, then go to rockandrollenglish.com/full volume to reserve your place. Remember, no money now, but you can guarantee your place before the price goes up. I am actually really excited about this. And so is Dan. Dan is actually excited for once in his life. So if you want to be part of it too and help us create something special, as we'll be using your feedback for the feedback of the first 100 members, hopefully that will be you, to add more services and create this. So yeah, if you want to be some part of something special, then you know what to do. I've told you about 10 times already. Do it now, put in your details, wait for Dan the man to respond to you, and just keep on rocking, baby.
Thanks so much for listening to Rock and Roll English. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit rockandrollenglish.com and facebook.com/rockandrollenglish. We'll catch you next time.